Thanks everyone for joining this meeting. My name is Renaud Bouguin-Chimebe, and I'm a PhD student at the School of Interactive Art and Technology. So I'm a freezer working with Philippe Pasquet from the Meta Creation Lab. So today we're very happy to have you. We're going to go through some basic onboarding for the Apollo software, which is my PhD research work. So Apollo officially is an interactive music environment for computer-assisted composition. And the main motivation behind this project was the understanding that now that we have AI algorithms that are capable of generating interesting musical patterns, we wanted to be able to allow musicians to have access to these without having to write code. And so the Apollo features, there's quite a bit of features at this point, but the main, I'm going to stick to the main aspects of things. The ability to manage corporas. So something that you're not going to have with for Live is that in Apollo, you can actually upload your own MIDI files, and everything works at the MIDI file level. And I will show that in a minute. And so you work with this sort of corporas. So like if you have like an album of like for example, we have albums of like Zelda that have been transcribed in MIDI. So that's what we gonna work from. So it's also good if you have your own material. You can also those are really good ways to use the system. Training custom model, and you can also do that. But for the purpose of this onboarding, we disabled the training feature because it's like not the focus of this research. So we were just gonna use, you're just gonna see the generation part. So you also have a MIDI player. You can visualize the MIDI. You can make change to the MIDI, like changing instruments and technically you could change channel numbers and things like that. But I don't have added the support yet. You can generate also batch and ranking. So this is the main sort of focus here for what Apollo has to offer is the ability to, whereas in for Life, we would generate kind of, select a bunch of track, then generate something, then see what you get, then generate again. In Apollo, you can say, give me 10 generation or give me 20 variations of this piano and then go from there. And we'll see how that workflow works, and it has some interesting features. And then the ranking is sort of an important like complement to the generation, because when you start to generate more than 100 variations of a track, or even more than what as a human you could write in a day, it becomes challenging then to kind of figure out how to go through them or manipulate them, navigate and browse them. And so the ranking is what it does. It allows you to be able to kind of order them in according to how similar they are to some given corpus. And again, we'll show that as well. And importing ML algorithms, again, we're not going to cover that today. But the last feature is you can stream also any content that is in Apollo to your favorite DAW. So we'll also see an example of that with Ableton. So if there are no questions at this point, I can move into the actual demo. So this is the Apollo system, the way it looks. So as I said, you have these corporas here. You can create new corporas. I can go new. I can say I want a corpora for, I don't know, like Renault app. I'm just making this up. I can create that, and I can go there. And from here, I can add tracks. So I can say, let's say I have some music here in the Apollo EP. I have maybe like the acid disco. I can add that. You can add more than one track, obviously. When you do that, you can then click on it. It will load into the viewer here. And this is where you can visualize the track. You can also play from here. It has a nice player integrated into it. So you can essentially you can add MIDI files, and then you can manage them, manage different corpora that you have. So you can delete, you can also download. So this is the download button. It will download it on your local computer. So when you work with new generation, if you want to use them, you can do that. And then this button is to send whatever you've loaded to use for generation, like you want to generate something out of it when you're happy with what you have. Yeah, you have other things: tempo, volume, basic controls, looping, next, previous, and also some keyboard controls, so you can play with space the tracks, or you can use V and B to move next track, previous track. Yeah, so let me go here. I can show some of the things we have. We have some Zelda. Yeah.
May I interrupt? Just kind of going back to what we were just doing.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're in the MIDI viewer, we are essentially like setting the MIDI that would be then generated after we like hit the little airplane buddy button.
That's yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
that's you would be setting like the seed that you want to start from
Cool.
to do your generation. Yeah.
Awesome.
And so yeah, so essentially I'm gonna show that right now. So I had this upload example here. So I have this one, which is the same one we used last week. So I'm using that for reference, the hard disk fever, but I'm using the 16 bar version. So if I play that, yeah, so if I have that and I'm happy with that, I can say, okay, I'm gonna send that for generation. So I click on the little button. And so when I go now here in the generate, here I will have list of like models, but they're essentially the sessions that you use for generation, right? So the last one that I just pushed the airplane on will be the one at the top. So if I click on that one, I will see I have the generation page, and I have the seed MIDI, so the starting point for my generation sequences, which is going to be the hard disk fever. Yeah, so once I loaded the track that I want to use for generation, I'm gonna have this little indicator here that says edit bar selection. So this is where if I click on that, it's gonna load the track again. But notice that now I have these controls here, these parameters for each channel, which are for the MMM model. And also now I have the ability to select bars in the MIDI. I can also drag and select like this, many sections at a time. And these essentially would be sections that I want, parts that I want the model to regenerate. So yeah, so the way you use it is from this point, I can play it again. I can change instrument here. So if I go, so the instrument will be mapped to the MIDI standard. So I can say, oh, I want maybe like an overdriven guitar here. And the nice thing is that if I generate from that, then that will be the instrument that is used for it. And something to note is that right now, all these changes that I'm doing are only going to be working for the generation. They are not going to modify the original MIDI file, something that we didn't put at this moment. So if I click on that track again, it will just go back to what the original file is. And just to show the difference, if I go to the browse and I click on the same track, it will show me the track without all those parameters, because in the Corpus, in the browse view, you are only kind of browsing those MIDI files. And in the generate view, you want to use the model. The difference would be that the MIDI viewer would indicate here this transformer mode, which will indicate to you that you are ready to use for generation. So let's generate something. So let's say here I'm simply going to say I want to generate like the first half here of the piano, and I want maybe like a high density, let's say. And then once I'm happy with that, I can just click generate. I'm going to generate one, and we'll see. Generation is pretty fast. So for 4 bars, yeah, it's already done actually. I didn't need that time to do. So yes, from here I can play it. Yeah, I just let it play a bit longer to show that the last part of the piano wasn't changed, but the MIDI is not showing it properly. Yeah, the idea is that you can make those change. I can select different parts and I can regenerate them, and then from there I can start going to a workflow process. So let's say I change the start of the piano. Maybe I like it, but I say, I also want it to match some new drum pattern. So let me select also the drum pattern section and generate from there. Now, what just happened is I'm generating the new track based on this one that I had, right? Based on 6977. So this one, now if I play it, so we can see that the model is able to do exactly what I asked it to do, and it becomes very interesting for like finding a groove in the creative process. And I can just keep going, right? So I could say now, okay, I like these variation that it gave me, and now I want maybe to see how it sounds on my favorite instrument, let's say. So I prepared an Ableton session here that I'll share after, which is just set up essentially to receive MIDI with the specific channels. So all you have to do in Apollo is Apollo, the system comes with a MIDI port. So if you click on the MIDI port here, you will see there's an Apollo driver bus. If I click on that, then every playback from the MIDI player here will be sent to that MIDI port. So on Ableton, all I have to make sure is that in my preferences on the MIDI, I have the Apollo driver set to on, input set to on track. And normally I should be able to receive. I'm also going to change my output here so that you can hear what goes in Ableton. And I should have a zoom, yeah. So from here now, if I play, we should be able to. Yeah, so that's essentially the way I can do it. So in this case, I had like very basic instrument, but if you have, other types of instrument, you want to hear how it sounds, you can do that. So then I have one last auxiliary here. So I want to add another track. So that's what the last example we're going to do before showing full bass generation and ranking. So from here, I'm going to add a new track. So to add a new track, I click on the plus button here. It would add a new track at the end with an open channel. And then from here, I can select an instrument. So let's say I want this new part to be a brass. So I'm going to select a brass section. Same as in MMM for Live, I could also select just like an instrument group, for example, and the model would choose a random instrument for me for that section. So here, a brass section, and I'm going to regenerate everything. So I click on the auto regression. So that means I want a full MIDI clip for this channel. And so I can go there, and I want maybe 4 variation this time. So that should take about 35 seconds, 40 seconds or so. And while that's happening, I can talk about these parameters here, which you've seen most of them in the MMM. So temperature control, limiting polyphony, the percentage, which will be the percentage of how much of the original MIDI clip is modified, track per step bar per step. These are all specific to MMM. So this will be familiar from the MMM for life. And now it's done. It probably took about 40 seconds. So now I should have these numbered. So I have 0, 1, 2, 3. And you always have every new generation, every time you click generate, you have a new number here, which is a kind of random number, which allows you to differentiate. So I know that these sections are all together, and I have these 4 parts. So if I click on those, I should see the new brass section, which is here. So if I play that, yeah, so there we go. So I'm going to play that again. Yeah, so I can listen to that. I can also go back to the system. And I'm going to use the controls V and B to go to the next one and listen to the different variations. It was a very long note. Yeah, so that gives you an example of kind of, again, the idea of the workflow. As we can tell here, the model gives us very different types of variations, and then we can work from that, right? So my last example is, before we move to questions, is going to be the session before that I've prepared this morning. So what I did here is quite a bit of generations, about 100 of, there's actually 100 of them, 101. And what I did is I generated 25 variations for each part. So essentially, we have 4 parts: the main piano line, the main bass line, the drum section, and the brass that we added at the end. So what I did, just to save time, I generated 25 variations. I asked the model to generate 25 new variations for the drum, 25 new variations from the bass, and 25 new variations for the melody, and also for the brass section. And so I just want to show again the power of a batch generation, and kind of we can skim through it very quickly and see what we have. So the first one here at the bottom, 790, is going to be the drum. So let's see what we have. So if I play that. Yeah, I'm gonna move to the piano line, bass line actually. Yeah,
question.
sorry. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you said you're using the controls V and B, are you just hitting the V and B on your keyboard?
Exactly. Yeah.
And not holding down control, so it's just
no. Okay.
toggles?
Yes. Sorry. Yes. That's correct. Just V and
Cool.
B. Yeah. So you can use
Awesome.
use the obviously click on the left and right here, but I just found for the workflow it's really nice to be able to do that. It's a simple thing, but it makes a big difference in being able to go through.
Yeah, you don't have to drag the mouse. Anyway, I'll stop interrupting.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. So this is bass changes. so I'm gonna do maybe just 5 more here. Let's do piano. Yeah, so from time to time, you would do like surprising things. But that's the idea of getting all these variations and being able to find interesting ideas. So the last one here for brass. Yeah, that's the last one. That's it. So yeah, so that's the idea. Using batch generation again allows us to very quickly generate interesting variations that we can start from, work from. Again, I can go to one of these, make changes to it, generate again, and then what I like, I can kind of say, okay, I'm going to download this, or I'm going to play this in Ableton and see how it sounds. And then you can also download all of them with this all button. It will give you a zip of whatever it's in the corpus. And then the last piece here is the ranking. I'm going to do the ranking on, I'm just going to do one example, and I'm going to do it on the shorter, the ones we generated here. So we generated here the brass, and I think this one here was a bunch of them, yeah, the start of the drum and the start of the brass. So ranking, what it does is if I have these, like we saw, I had like 100 of them, some of them closer to the original copy, the original track, some of them much more exploratory. And also, by the way, the batch generation that we just went through with the hundreds of them, I did not change any of this control. So it was just give me new variations, do whatever you want. So you can see the power of what you could do if you play with density, polyphony, note length, temperature, and all these other controls. There's just literally so much that you can explore. But with ranking becomes useful because I can sort of say, in this case, I have this corpus here that I generated. I'm going to say, I want to know how this corpus rank in comparison to the Apollo example corpus, which is the one that has my original track. So essentially, technically, it should be reordering these tracks in the list based on the ones that are closest enough in this kind of sound and MIDI pattern to the original content, right? And I'm going to click ranking here, and why it's doing that. So if I say close enough, you probably ask yourself, well, how do you decide whatever it's close? Yeah, you just did it, but it's like, how do you decide whatever is close, right? Because music is quite subjective. Some people might say this is close, some people might say this is not. Obviously, this is based on like a specific algorithm that was actually developed by Jeff, which also developed the MMM model. And the idea is that it's going to use very highly complex statistical calculations to give you that answer. But in the end, just like in anything else with music, it's going to be to the for you to listen to your ear, right? That's basically the thing. But it gives you something to start from. So if we listen here, we'll see what we have. So from the first to the last. So yeah, that's a good example. I think essentially, as you can see here, what it did is that it considered that the ones that had the added brass section were certainly more different because of that. So that might be one way to think about it. But yeah, I'm gonna stop talking at this point. I think that's the end of the demo here, and we can move into questions and next steps. Thank you.